everyone. This is Linda, and my podcast guest today, I'm really excited about because he's going to talk about plan giving. And maybe you've watched some other of my podcasts where we covered aspects of plan giving, but Chris McGown has a really interesting take on plan giving. So I'm eager to have you hear what his thoughts are. And we're also going to be talking about a new book he has coming out, if I can give a little sneak preview here. But first, Chris, maybe you can tell me a little bit about yourself, where you're located, and about your company, and how you got into plan giving, why you're making that your specialty.
Yeah. It is not the norm, that's for sure. Although my trip to playing giving is pretty normal. But we'll start with the basics. So my name is Chris McGown. I'm the founder and principal of Peak 9860. I formed the company after retiring from the in the nonprofit world. I retired after just over 30 years. Hands-on work, and I did it all from the caseload all the way through managing the teams and all the different elements of development, so direct mail and major giving and capital campaigns. I had all of that, but I always maintained a few plan giving people once I got into the field because I just fell in love with the intimacy of those relationships. Now, the reality is the bulk of the time there isn't a relationship, right? And it sounds horrible, but it's very transactional. A donor wants your name, your number, how to word it. They don't want to sit down and have coffee and all that. But those who do or have more complex problems, those get really amazing conversations. So it's been a lot of fun. So I was in small area development in a small unit in the eastern shore of Maryland, in Salisbury, Maryland. And the way it worked then was the plan giving guy would come in from out of town, and then he'd have a local rep go with him to tell the local story. And then he knew, all the technical sides of plan giving and help all that go through. So I was just sort of that local face. And I did that for a couple of years with a guy. And then he came one time and he visited, and he says, at the end of it, he says, listen, I got to go, but this is my last visit. I'm moving over here. And the first thing they want me to do is build a team. Do you want to come with me? And I said, yes, I do. So I packed everything in the back of my Chevy S10 because everything I owned would fit in the back of my little Chevy S10. And I went down to Charlotte, North Carolina, and I drank from a fire hose. I mean, it was just an enormous amount of information because in the training, they were adamant that all the ins and outs without ever using the language of the ins and outs. So not only know it, but you have to know it to a level that you can talk about it to the eighth grader, right? And so it was a really, really intense session, and it continued for about 3 years. You get the overview, and it's mind-boggling. And then as you get into the experiences, you go back to them, and your coach comes along with you to help you learn. And so that's how I did it. And I really fell in love with it. As I mentioned, the intimacy of those relationships. And you're talking to people who love their child, but knows that their child loves slow horses and fast women, and they can't give them the big chunk of money, right? So how do you do that? How do you address it? And all the tools go along with that. And so it really was an amazing experience all through those years. When I retired, through the year, you meet people who are in the plan giving field, and there aren't a whole lot of us that specialize in it, right? It just isn't a broad field. And so, I got some friends together, and as I retired, a few others retired with about that same time. We kind of came together and joined this company, Peak 9860. And the idea was that we knew that people needed good basic hands-on knowledge. So we started doing this training. We trained a lot of nonprofits on how to do it and what it looked like in action, but nothing ever happened. It just didn't get done because of the same thing, the sense of urgency, right? Or what Stephen Covey calls the tyranny of urgency. And so we started doing what we now call fractional plan giving work. So we'd actually go in and run a plan giving program for nonprofits as part of their team, exclusively focused on plan giving. So not getting caught up in, who's decorating the banquet, did the mail appeal go out, on all that kind of stuff. Now, I attend staff meetings virtually, and I'll chime in on years of experience, but my focus is plan giving to help them get it done. And so that's sort of been what it was. Now, over the years, two of the three have already re-retired. They said, yeah, this is too much like work. And so I didn't retire to stay and work. And they still come on from time to time, but it's just really just two of us, and the other one's just really part-time. So it's sort of my little baby, my little focus. And I truly love it. And we are starting to go back into training as fewer people right now have the budgets for the plan giving fractional work. They're having a hard time paying their regular staff, much less a fractional staff. So we're refocusing on training, helping people make training a reality. And that's sort of where that book came from that we talked about. So we'll get there sooner or later, but that book's just sort of the culmination of that.
Okay. Well, this has been fascinating. I'll tell you one area I never thought I would want to work in. Well, two areas I never wanted to work in is special events and planned giving. But you're getting me so cranked up here. Maybe I should start thinking about this planned giving in my
Plan giving is so much fun.
It
So
sounds
much fun.
like you really are enjoying it, and you're much more lively than most planned giving people that I talk to, frankly.
Well, the thing is it people want to view it as morbid or depressing. You're talking about death and dying, but you're
Right.
really not, right? You're talking about love, and you're talking about people who love your organization so much. They're putting you in a legal document right beside their spouse, their children, their grandchildren. Like, talk about honor. I mean, there's no higher calling than that. And so being able to talk to people about that and make that a reality for them, watching their eyes light up when they realize they can do significantly more than they thought they could through their will, it's amazing. It really is. It isn't morbid. It is true joy. You just have to be able to postpone the gift, right? You have to know that you're not going to get, hopefully not for a long time,
Right.
but the joy is immediate, right? It's you can watch their heart come. I've settled that. It's done. It's such a huge burden off of them. And I can't imagine doing anything else every day. I love it.
I can see that. It really shows. But I know it in I think we met on LinkedIn. I believe that's how we got to know each other.
I believe so. Yeah.
Never met in person, but when I found out you were started out at Maryland, I used to live in Pennsylvania, so we were practically neighbors and didn't know
Well,
it.
I grew up in the northern panhandle of West Virginia. So I was 2.5 miles from Pennsylvania, 2.5 miles from Ohio.
Oh,
So,
really? Oh, well,
yeah,
I was on the eastern side of Pennsylvania, but
yeah,
closer to Salisbury, probably, than where
yeah,
you
yeah,
grew
yeah, yeah.
up. But in your LinkedIn post, one of the things that I was intrigued by is you're kind of adamant about focusing on gifts through wills. And I know there are many other planned giving vehicles, but why is it that, and I think you've already answered that a little bit, but maybe expand on that a little bit about why you really focus on wills.
Yeah. So we did a study when we first formed Peak 9860 that we got together. We went out to different organizations we worked with and talked with and dealt, and we talked to over 50 organizations. We gathered information about what the industry calls matured gifts. It's a very polite way of saying the donors have died. And so the gifts have matured. And we pulled all that data together, and we found that on average, 79% of all gifts that came to nonprofits were gifts by will. The next one down was 7%, and it was gifts of life insurance. And then then the next was gifts of retirement assets.
Hmm.
So those three gifts, that's 92% of all planned giving are three very simple, easy tools, but 79%, and for some organizations, it was 100%. Like in all of them, the majority came from gifts by will.
Hmm.
Well, you are never going to do the will, right? You're not an attorney. It would be unethical for a nonprofit to write a will for a donor anyway, right? So that's not going to happen. All you have to know is what you're going to say to the donor when they say, I would like to benefit you in my will. And or whenever you're talking to a donor and you say, have you ever considered XYZ charity in the name in your will? And when you know how to say that, that's all there is to plan giving for most people. I tell people all the time, if you're a really good development person, I can teach you what you need to know about plan giving in 45 minutes to cover
Wow.
98% or 92% of every interaction you have. And for the other 8%, all you have to know is a life I call. Who do I bring in is going to know this to do the 8% that I don't know.
Right.
What are the chances, right? I'll talk to 92 people and get it right every time. So it is definitely right. And so everyone knows they need to have a will, right? Even people who have very complex estates have to have a will, but so few people have a will or have
That's
a
true.
valid will.
Right.
And so if you can talk about a will, you can hit your mark 100% of the time because everybody needs to have it. And if you continue doing, you're going to hit that mark, and 72% of the time are going to be people who are going to consider leaving you in their will. And so why not focus exclusively on that? When you go to a ways to give and there's this big long laundry list of ways to give, right? It's it's analysis, paralysis by analysis. Donors
Hmm.
get lost in that. And when a confused mind says no. And so if you focus your message on one thing and you say it consistently and persistently, it's going to sink in when the time is right. And so it is gifts by will, gifts by will, gifts by will, gifts by will, always and forever. No matter how big your nonprofit is, that's your main message. If in that conversation it goes somewhere else, great. That's what the donor wants, right? But everybody needs a will, so stick with that.
Yeah, and if I recall, when I first entered this field, which was a long time ago, I remember hearing a statistic that something like only 25% of people in this country have a will. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it was so yes, 7 out of 10 of Americans don't have an up to date will. They may have a will. A lot of people get a will when they have a child,
Mm-hmm.
right? They'll go out and form their first will, but then they don't update it.
Mm.
And life happens, right? You get married, you get divorced, your children become adults. Like both of my
Right.
children are adults.
Mm-hmm.
Now the oldest one, I would gladly give him. If I ever passed away, I wouldn't. He probably wouldn't spend a dime. He's a nickel pincher, just like his mother, right? My youngest son, if I were to give him a lump sum, he would have a whole bunch of magic. I think is the game. I don't know, cards. These games he play. Right? And he'd have the best deck in the world, but still be living in my basement, right? And so it's how do you plan for that? So if I hadn't updated my will, it'd be very out of date, right?
Right.
So 7 out of 10 of Americans do not have an up-to-date will. And
That's
that
just amazing.
it is staggering. And I know this is controversial, but I think it's the most selfish thing a person can do is to not have a will. When your family's already struggling with your loss, now to make them go through this
Right.
and have to determine what would he have wanted, or go through the fight of how does property get divided.
Hmm.
It's a incredibly selfish thing not to have that very, very simple document that you
I,
can do for free. Or yeah, I mean, there's lots of nonprofits. You can go to free will right now and get a free will. You don't have to, don't have to give anything, right? So go do it. There's
yeah.
nothing stopping you.
Wow. That's amazing. And, I think the work that you're doing, you're not only helping the organizations that you work with, but think of the people who you can help through this. I mean, I'm paranoid I've changed my will because I've moved to 3 different states and had some different regulations, and I have to change
Hmm.
it again soon because I have a new church that I'll have to take out the old church and put the new church in my will. But I think it's such a big favor to help people get over this because you're right. I think most people don't give much thought to this, but after you've had some losses in your family, I know when my husband died, I immediately made my funeral arrangements and we already had our wills made out. And I called the lawyer. I said, "Do I have to change this?" He said, "No, you're just the sole trustee. Mine's actually in a trust." And he said,
Right.
"You're just the sole trustee." He said, "If you want to, I can charge you $1,500 to change it or something like that." But he said, "You don't have to." So to me, if somebody would have talked to me, I mean, I know enough about planned gifts to know where I want my money going, but many people, I think you're doing them a favor by helping them do
That's one
that.
of the things I talk to nonprofits about is this is a way you can talk to your constituents and add value to their life, right?
Right.
You don't have to ask them for a gift. You can just start sharing with them. Here's the importance of a will. Lay out the elements of it and break that up over time talk giving value to your donors. You don't have to say, hey, when you go make a will, include us in it. You can just talk about the values of it. You can talk about how to do it. You can talk about the tools of it, the drawbacks of it, all the elements of it. It's a real value add for your constituents without having to go to them one more time and ask for a gift. Yeah,
Right.
ultimately, you hope they're going to do that, right? But the reality is, you've added value to their life. They're going to remember that. The law of reciprocity kicks in all across the spectrum of development, and plan giving is no different.
Right. You are so passionate about this. Is there one area of planned giving that you're really passionate about more than most people are, perhaps?
Yeah, yeah. My endless mantra is policies and procedures.
You're a
Policies and
man
procedures.
after my own heart.
And I know it can sound boring, but and it's not fun to do, but it's not hard to do either. But the reality is, if you've got really strong policies and really strong procedures, it allows you the freedom to talk to your donors with integrity, right? So you can then go talk to your donor and say, here's the wording. If you use this wording, we have policies that are going to ensure that what you think is going to happen to your gift is going to happen to your gift. Because reality is, we're talking about what happens when they can no longer defend it, right? You can't go say, hey, you gave us this money and you said this, but did you really mean this? Right? That happens now, right? You go talk to a donor and they gave it for this program. Well, am I allowed to use it for overhead? To pay staff salaries for that program? You can have those conversations while they're alive. You can't in a will gift. And so by having policies in place that say, if you use this specific wording, this is what we're going to do with your gift. It allows you to go and talk with integrity, and then allows you to have integrity at the moment of decision. It allows when the gift comes in and you're a little bit short on payroll, but the money was earmarked for the endowment, for example, right? You have the integrity in place and the policies in place to protect that I know I need that money right now. And yes, the donor would have wanted. No, you made an agreement and you have the policies to back that up. And then so having that gift acceptance policy that's really lined out, but not so precise in that if they say to the XYZ endowment, would be different than to the endowment, right? So you have to have some latitude in there. And when I talk about that when I teach and when I train on this particular thing, or in the book, you'll see, how to have wording that covers you, but allows some flexibility, because donors often will tweak things a little bit, but still have the same intent. And attorneys tweak things frequently. So we mentioned earlier, I worked for the Salvation Army. I worked for them for about 30 years. And the Salvation Army's legal name in the state of Kentucky is the Salvation Army, a Georgia corporation. So the southern 15 states and District of Columbia is all incorporated out of the state of Georgia. There's 4 corporations. Well, there's
Oh, I didn't know
125
that.
corporations. Yeah, well, you shouldn't, right? It doesn't matter. There
I've worked
is
with
no,
several Salvation Armies myself, but I
yeah,
never knew that.
there's no nonprofit known as the Salvation Army.
Hmm.
None. It doesn't exist. They're all the Salvation Army, a Georgia corporation, or the Salvation Army, a New York corporation, or the Salvation Army, an Illinois corporation, or the Salvation Army, a California corporation, right? So they're broken up because, it's a big organization. You
Right.
limit yourself, right? But I would give the wording that as the donors and I would give it to the donor, and the donor would give it to the attorney, and the attorney would change it to the Salvation Army of Kentucky Corporation.
Oh no.
Or they would say, or just say Salvation Army. Well, that's not our legal name is the Salvation Army, right? So donors do this sort of thing all the time. I mean, attorneys do this all the thing so all the time. So you've got to have some flexibility in there, and yet enough to know the integrity is in place. So that's, the gift acceptance policies that are lined out and clear. I can walk you through step by step how to do that. But then there's the procedure side of it, right? So when a gift comes in, what happens? Who's notified? What's the process? How's it getting updated in the CRM? Where's the money go? Where does it stay until a decision? All those procedures, step by step, lined out and then followed, is just as important, so that you're not constantly recreating the wheel. And so you don't have to go, well, what did we do last time? Oh, we know what we did last time because we have a policy and we have a procedure around that. And there's always going to be something new. So you're always adding to it and growing it. So I always say, don't ever change your policy, build on your policies. You're not going to change what you're going to do when that comes in, but this now donor wants to do something different. So we create a policy around that. We create a procedure around what they want to do so that when it happens, we know what's going to happen. So policy and procedures are, I know they're boring. I know they're not sexy, but they're so important for integrity. And from a fundraising standpoint, it also gives you a shield. I'm sorry, we can't accept that gift. Because you're always going to have a gift you don't want.
Right.
My general rule of thumb is when people are trying to give me property, I run, right? Because normally when they're giving you property, it's
Oh,
because they
yeah.
can't sell it, right? Did I forget to mention that gas tank that was buried there 100 years ago? You know, but so if you have these policies in place, it gives you an out and still be able to maintain your relationship with the donor, right? I'm sorry, I really wish we could, but our policies don't allow that. So it gives you this shield of protection in addition to the integrity of the positive side. So it's not something to be feared or dreaded. It really is the best thing for a donor relationship is to have clear, precise policies that protect you and the organization. I know it's boring, but I love it.
No, I think it's critical though. When you were talking about the titling of the Salvation Army, I had a client once. It was not a Salvation Army, but it was an organization, and the person who wrote the will that wanted to leave them money didn't have the correct title, and they ended up losing that gift that the donor had intended to go to them, and it went to some other organization because they said, oh, well, they probably meant this, so they gave it to this other organization, and it was a real mess.
So in my book, I talk about having your one wording that you use, just one ever. The only one you ever promote and talk about, whatever that is, whatever you want it to be. But in that wording, you have your legal name and your tax ID number, not your address.
Right.
Not everybody
No,
wants to put the address in there.
oh,
Why the address? But when you do the tax ID number, so I'm on the board of a small nonprofit here in Louisville called Alley Cat Advocates. And their whole thing is to spay and neuter community cats,
oh.
right? That's their thing. And I think it's ironic because I hate cats.
Oh, I
Absolutely,
love cats.
I hate cats and I'm highly allergic to cats, but I hate cats. And I thought, well, why do you want to? Well, because their whole job is to spay and neuter cats, right? Reduce cat population. I'm all about this, right? But they're a small nonprofit, but there's a much larger nonprofit called Alley Cat Allies.
Oh no.
And they're a large nonprofit based out of California. And so this is the example I use, right? So a donor can accidentally say one or the other, right, in their will, and the gift get mixed up. And if you have the tax ID number, though, it doesn't matter anything else, right? That's going to override. If you have the wrong address, the wrong name, or if you just say Salvation Army, but you have 58-606029, yes, I still have it memorized. It is, they know they know where it's going to go, right? There's no questions, no comments. Right? They know where it's going to go. So always make sure that your tax ID number is part of the wording you give out all the time to anybody and everybody.
That's really critical, I think, because I've worked with many organizations who have not only changed their address, but sometimes changed their name too.
Yeah.
So, and that's how this organization that I mentioned lost their account because they did make a change in their name and they had moved to a different address. So they just
Right.
lost the whole
And
gift.
because your donor loves you, they left you there, but that doesn't mean the person following has ever heard of you. They may live across town, they may live across the country, they may be a disinterested third party. So you've got to make it easy, not on your donors, yes, but you've got to make it easy on whoever's going to follow up on that, who's going to be the executor or the administrator of the estate, so that they can find you to give you the money. Because I promise you, they're not going to look really hard. They just aren't, right? They're going to make their best guess and move on with life.
Exactly. It was something that you said in the policies and procedures, and I'm big on policies and procedures for major gifts, for any gift, but I think you made it really clear how important it is for plan giving. But one thing you mentioned was how it gets recorded in CRM. And I think everybody listening to this probably knows what a CRM is, but it's a constituent relationship management software. And I think I'd like you to just expand a little bit about, are there best practices on how you do enter a planned gift into your CRM?
Yeah. Let's start with every CRM is different, right? Well, let's start with I hate CRM. I hate the idea of managing a relationship, but setting that aside, right? That's what they're called, right? Your database, whatever you want to call it, right?
Right.
So they're all different. They all have different functionalities and different tools. If you're using Monday, if you're using what was the one I just did, or a Black Bar product, or Little Green Light, it doesn't matter. They're all different.
Mm.
So what matters is you get in your system and say, okay, how does this system either natively coded? So some have a native coding for plan giving tools. Others, you have to use some sort of element in it. It doesn't really matter what you do as far as how you do it. But what matters most is that you have a practice written down of exactly what you're going to do so that you code them the exact same way. So you code. So there are three kind of tiers in the plan giving process. The first tier is that general tier, and I absolutely positively hate the name, but it's a name the industry uses. They stole it from sales. It's a suspect. And I hate suspects, right? But those are people who've expressed some sort of interest. They've done something to lead you to believe they're of interest, right? They checked the box, they attended a webinar, whatever, right? Maybe they just liked a Facebook post. Whatever your policies and your procedures say means a suspect is, right? So are you going to have that in your system? And if so, how are you going to code them? And then is it a checkbox? Is it a constituency? Is it a role? Every CRM is something different. And then you have the prospect. Well, prospect is general, right? So that's used in major giving. It's used in corporate relations. So prospect is a given, but you then have to determine what is a planned giving prospect, right? And are they treated differently than a standard prospect? I would argue they should not be, right? They should be cultivated the exact same way. So the prospect status is a prospect status, whether it's a major gift or a planned gift or whatever. And then a donor. How are you going to code a plan giving donor? Well, naturally in CRMs, a constituent becomes a donor in most CRMs automatically when you apply revenue. Well, with a planned gift, you don't apply revenue, right? There's no revenue to apply in most planned gifts that nonprofits deal with. And so how do you then code them as a plan giving donor? Now, some CRMs have a constituency, several CRMs have a constituency called planned giver. I don't like that term either, but no one asked me, right? But it's someone who has made a planned gift. So and again, whether you have to add it as a custom field or if you're using something native, it really doesn't matter. What matters is that you have it written down and that you do that consistently. The next part then is that gift element, right? When someone says, "Yes, I've included you in my will," all right. So then now what is the practice? What are the policies and practices that you have in place, the procedures that you have in place to record that? Some CRMs will not allow you to record a gift without a dollar amount, right? And so some nonprofits say, well, we want it as a gift. So they create some weird number. So I worked with an organization that was founded in 1927. So they've been around for a nice long time, approaching 100 years. So when they put a planned gift in where they don't know the dollar amount, they put it in as $19.27. That's their little code for it. We
Okay.
know that's a planned gift. We don't know how much the money is. I think that's silly, right? But
Yeah.
whatever you want to do. Some will put it in as 1 penny, and they'll put in. Others will put it in as a pledge. It's a pledge that sits out there that it'll be paid at some point in the future. And again, the best practice isn't so much do this because every CRM is different. I can't tell you to do that. Now, if I were to sit down with you and I've worked with a lot of different CRMs over the years, right? I could probably give you exactly what that CRM will do in the best way of doing it. But what matters is that you have the practices recorded and in place so that when it happens, you know exactly what you're going to do and you're following that. So really the best practice is line out exactly what you're going to do. Think through the process all the way through. What is it you're going to do? How are you going to cultivate them? And then ultimately, when that money does come in, right? What is your practices and procedures for that then? You know, sooner or later that pledge, if you had it, because it was a pledge, will be fulfilled. What is that practice? Are you going to apply it to the donor's record? Well, the donor's deceased. Are you going to create a new record for an estate of, which I would argue is the best practice, what you should do? But that's, I argue, I can no longer give you a gift if I've passed away, right? I died probably 3 or 4 months ago.
Right.
So it's my estate who made the gift, because my mantra is always the gift should reside on the record that gets the tax receipt. And
Mhm.
I can't get a tax receipt. I'm McDead, right? So it goes to my estate. My estate needs that tax receipt when they file. So when they file their final estate taxes. So I believe you should create a new policy, but not everyone agrees, right? I'm not going to die on that hill. The hill I will die on is making sure that you are consistent. You've recorded it. It's recorded. You know what you're going to do, and you follow it religiously as you move through, so that when you leave that organization, the next guy can pull out the book and go, oh, here's the practices, here's the procedures. I know exactly what to do, right? So that's the best practice. The best practice is recording it, being intentional, and being consistent.
And one question that just brought to mind to me is, you know, how many times does a donor come in and say, we left your organization $50,000 in our will, or if it's a percentage, they obviously don't know the amount, but what's the practice like if they just come in and say, oh, I remembered you in my will? Do you ask them for an amount or an estimated amount, or do you just leave it to
So
go with
that's actually goes back to the policies, um, that, because your organization is going to want to wrestle with what is it you're going to require from the donor to consider the donor a planned giver, a planned giving donor. I believe with all of my heart, all a donor needs to do is to indicate they have done so, right? But there are nonprofits out there who will only count irrevocable gifts. Those are very few. There are very few irrevocable gifts in the plan giving world, right? A will gift is revocable. 79% of the time is a will gift. And so, but there are others that say, okay, we'll let you count a will gift, but you have to sign this letter saying you made a will gift and tell us exactly how much it's for to be a considered. And I just think that really damages the relationship.
Mhm.
So let's assume the organization's policy is the right policy in my book, that all it takes is the donor saying, "I've included you in my will." So now you're to go back to your question. What do you do? Well, that would depend on the relationship, right? So if you have a strong relationship with the donor, asking that question isn't a bad thing at all. What I teach when I'm teaching donors, people how to go through this, is I say, you need to find 3 elements of it. So the one I used for a very, very long time, because the Salvation Army works with food so much, I would say, that's amazing. Thank you so much for including us. It's a tremendous honor that you've included us. I'm curious though, because we can use gifts in different ways. Are we talking about a gift that'll buy a bread box, buy a bread truck, or buy a bread factory? What kind of gift are we talking about here, right?
Oh,
And those, oh no, you'll probably buy 8 or 10 trucks, right? They'll give you some sort of, or sometimes they'll just come out and say, oh, it's $50,000, or it's 100, whatever, or $5,000,
right.
whatever, right? So oftentimes, if I give them 3 mission-related steps that are exaggerated, right? A loaf of bread or a
Wonderful
bread
idea.
box, a bread truck or a bread factory, or
Yeah.
whatever yours are, right? It allows them to give you some sort of indication. Now, sometimes they say, I don't know what it's going to be. Right now, I want you to know you're in there. It doesn't matter how much. Respect that, right? But if you have a relationship with a donor, not asking the question is a mistake in my mind. One is, you miss an opportunity. You'll never get an opportunity to go back to that, right? You can't next time, hey, you mentioned, it just doesn't work, right? And then also, about half the time the donors tell you that, they want to tell you the rest. They
Mhm.
just don't want to seem braggadocious, right?
Right.
And so by giving them an opportunity, you're allowing them to express their gratitude and their love for you in a way that they wouldn't feel comfortable doing naturally, but because you've asked the question, they can answer it without feeling ostentatious.
That- That's a great idea. And sometimes maybe it even allows the person who would like to have given more, but their circumstances don't permit it, to say, well, gee, I would love to have given you everything, but I have 6 kids that I have to take care of.
Right.
So I'm giving
Right.
you X number. And I think, that you really have some great ideas. I just love
Well,
this.
I learned a lot on the hard way.
Sure. Yeah. One of the things that I guess I'm curious about is I know I've talked to this question with some of the other people who talked about planned gifts, but you might have a different perspective on what do you feel is the best prospect for a planned gift? Who do you think is it the 70-year-old, the 50-year-old?
Yeah.
What is a good
So
prospect?
conventional wisdom is someone over the age of 65 years old with no children, right? And there's no doubt that's a really good plan giving prospect. But here's the reality we know from study after study. This isn't our study. This is studies out there. All right. So you study Russell James, and others out there. The average person who includes a nonprofit in their estate plans does so about age 45 for the first time.
Wow. That's
Much
really
younger than most people think
good.
about, right?
That-
Now, they may not continue or they may change or whatever, right? But most people who are going to include them in the estate plan do so at a younger age than we ever would have imagined. So that's first approach is, but the reality is, I would argue everybody's a plan giving prospect. So one of the other fascinating studies that it's not in the download I told you about that we're going to give to everybody who listened. I will add it before I send it to you. Is that about 20 in the same study we did, about 20% of the people who included the nonprofits in their estate plans were not in the CRM.
Really?
No
Oh my
past
God.
experience at all. Now the largest percentage of those of people who of that, so all nonprofits had somebody who was not in their CRM made a bequest to them or made a gift to them, almost always a bequest. It happened more frequently though with what I would call step gifts. So a good example of this, my company runs a food drive. I chair the food drive. I get all the employees to give. I make sure I all do right. But my name is never associated with that
Hmm.
because it's the company, right? So my name is never in there. But I've loved you. I've given to you over and over and over again, right? Not only have I given you my time and energy, I just all did it through my company as a company drive. So I was never related, even though I was very passionate about what was happening on that side of it. And then, of course, you have the educational side of it, where parents or children feel very attached to their child's or their parents' alma mater, or their parent or children's churches. You'll see that as well. So it happens all the time. So the answer to your question is I really do teach a two-pronged approach. One is those targeted people, right? The people you feel by looking at your database, right? That's people who've consistently given to you, who are on your board, who volunteer, who you're going to go one-on-one in approach and talk to them about a planned gift proactively. But at the same time, I believe you should tell everybody through general meeting, right? You're not going to walk around with a sandwich board out on the street and say, but you're going to include it in your social media posts. You're going to include it in your newsletters. You're going to include it in your other advertising, other things you're doing. You're going to talk about adding adding your organization as a gift through a will, because you just don't know who's going to be the right candidate. So at the right time. So it isn't, to me, there isn't an ideal candidate except everybody. Everybody is a potential plan giving donor. It isn't just the wealthy. In fact, wealthy people, the higher the wealth, the less likely they are to make a planned gift to a nonprofit.
Really? That's
Yes.
interesting.
They're more apt to make large gifts during their lifetime to be able to take advantages of it. But they're the really, really wealthy people have a much higher tax motive than the average American, right? An individual individual exemption is better than $13.5 million this year. You know, we're talking about less than 2% of the population are even subjected to federal estate tax, right?
Right.
So it's a very small number. So we're talking about people who generally love you and don't need the state. So we're talking about people who are at, they live check to check through most of their life, and yet they have these assets built up. And so a gift by will, they can make a gift substantially more than they ever could during their lifetime because they are making it out of their net worth rather than out of disposable income. And so they're able to make these gifts they haven't been able to do, and they can fill the score of completion. And the only way to touch base with them, if you start segmenting your database and start mailing to these particular people, one, I would tell the average nonprofit, don't waste your money on special marketing. It's just a waste of your money. There are, as you mature, yes, you'll want to do that kind of stuff. But for the vast majority of nonprofits, do not do anything special. Don't buy anything for plan giving. Just start including it in everything you're doing. Do a little call out box in your newsletter. Please tell me you're still doing print newsletters. Print newsletters are an invaluable tool for nonprofits, regardless of plan giving. If you're not doing a print newsletter, start. I promise you, they have a lifespan that is an amazing lifespan. They stick around forever. But we'll set that aside. Do your call in your newsletter. Add a PS on your emails. Put it in your signature block. Put it in your Facebook posts. Do it on your TikTok account. Whatever it is you have. Talk to anybody and everybody about this once in a while. Not every day. That'd become weird, right? But just every once in a while, you tie it in with what you're already doing. How can you insert plan giving into what you're doing as a tool rather than keeping it out here by itself for this select group of people? At the same time, you are going one-on-one talking to people, right? Those people who you want to target, who you say, these are our best donors, they're most committed, they're most engaged. I want to go make sure I talk to them about this. So that two-pronged approach of intentional, proactive, and then the blast that allows them to raise their hand and say, yes, I want to know more. And then having those practices, those policies and procedures in place for when they raise their hand, what happens? What happens from there?
The ones that you do want to be intentional with, how do you even start a conversation about plan giving if you're with a major donor or someone that's...
So the tool I used for years, we'll start with the groundwork. Plan giving, as much, if not more than all forms of fundraising, is permission based. You cannot just broach the subject cold. You can't. You immediately shut down everything else you'd done, right? You immediately shut down the good, warm, fuzzy feeling and everything. It just changes the dynamic of the conversation if you bring it up cold. So the process I've used and the process I encourage other nonprofits to do is, if you're you have a relationship because they're a major donor, you've met them several times, and you've done this, right? You're on your third hug goodbye at the door, right? And you're just trying to get out the door because you got another meeting to go to, but you don't want to be rude. You've drank your Sanka, whatever. And what I do is I take a step back and I say, next time I'm here, I would love to talk to you about how you can make a gift to, or how you can leave your legacy to XYZ Corporation in your will. I don't ask. I don't wait for a response. I turn around and leave. I say, the next time I'm here, or normally I'd actually say, it depends on the relationship. Normally I would say, in a future visit, I would love to talk to you about how you can leave your legacy with a gift through your will to XYZ. And then I leave. I don't wait for an answer, and I don't ask a question at all. All I've done is planted the seed. I've allowed them to think, okay, at some point they're going to talk about this, right? I've done it in a way that won't ruin what I've done up to that point. I've done it in a way where I've not confused an ask, right? So if I just ask them for something, or I've not confused that. I've not made an ask. I've just simply planted a seed. And depending on the relationship, either the next visit, if I can't get to them that often, or a couple visits later, I'll say, when I'm making the appointment, not in the meeting, when I'm making the appointment, you may recall a couple times ago when we met, I mentioned I wanted to talk to you about this. On this visit, we have scheduled on this date, this time. Would it be a good time to talk to you about what that might look like? And let them say yes or no. They may say right then and there, that's not something I'm able to do, right? They may say this would be great, or they may say, I don't really know I'm ready for that. And from there, you can say, well, you may not be ready for it, and I understand that. Not everybody is, but wills are so important for your family. I want to talk to you about the importance of what it means for your family to make a will gift. If you choose to make one to include XYZ Corporation or XYZ organization, that'd be great. But I think it's just important for us to talk about that as such an important tool for your family, right? And so then you can go and talk to them as part of the visit, saying, without a will, here's what happens. And you name the 5 things that happen when you die, what's called intestate, right? You die without a will. You talk about the 5 very bad things that can happen to family, right? And how burdensome it is to, and nobody wants to be a burden on their family. They love them, right?
Right.
So you talk about that, and then you let it go. And then a couple of visits later, you can talk, hey, listen, we mentioned that. Have you had a chance to act on that? Have you thought about that at all? Have you thought about it? And they say yes or no. Then you say, well, when you're making your plans or when you made your plans, have you considered? And you can bring them back up. As long as you don't press or push, you can continue to bring it back up until the answer is a flat no. And if it's a flat no, move on, right? Not everybody's going to make a plan gift. A very small percentage are going to make a plan gift, but you don't know who it's going to be. And you don't know that the no today may not be a yes tomorrow. The average person, when they make a decision to write their will, or they make a decision to include the nonprofit in their will, it's because of a major life event. The most common life event is the death of a loved one. Now, the loved one may be a spouse, but more often than not, it's someone a close friend, something like that. And they start to think about things, right? So that death, and that happens every single day. Every single day someone dies. So you've got to have that top of mind awareness so that when they're ready for that, they know, gave me that wording. What was that again? And then go and find it quickly and easily because you're talking about it consistently and persistently, either in your letters, your emails, or on your website.
Yeah. You really are just a wealth of information that I think everybody's going to really appreciate. But as a fellow author, I'm really eager to talk about your book. And I want to know about your book, when it's going to come out, and tell us a little bit about the book. And I
So
know you have some great plans for people for this book.
I do. So we'll start with that because I don't want to forget about it. So when it's an ebook, it'll come out first part of May. We'll have it wrapped up and ready to go first part of May. I hope, please. The plan is first part of May. But I have a wait list, and I create a special wait list just for your podcast. And people who sign up there will be able to get an 85% off discount. So I'm going to release it at its pre-release at $17. So very inexpensive for everybody. But for your folks, what is that? $2.50, something like that, $2.55, something like that. Just, cover the kind of cost of the world. But it is, so the book came about because I am passionate. I love this. And I wanted to have a tool to give to folks as I'm talking with them, to executive directors or development directors or to volunteers who are doing this or to boards. Here's a book that'll give you the 101, right? You can't afford to hire me. Fine. Read this book and go do that, right? And I don't even want to count how many books I've read on plan giving and on fundraising. And all of them have something, right? There's some tool in them, but they all seem to want to justify their cost with jargon and legalese. And I love this stuff, and some of it makes my eyes glaze, right? And so I kept looking for this tool I could give the average person that gives them the step-by-step. Here's the information you need. Here's how you apply it. Here's what it means for you, right? So the information and the action to go make it work in reality. And it just didn't exist. And so finally it came to a point where, okay, enough's enough. I've spent enough time. I've spent enough money. I'm just going to go write it. I'm going to write the tools of what is it? Is it exhaustive? By no means. It is far from it. You could write a library on plan giving, and because it changes every year, right? The tax laws change and adjust every single year. But what the average donor or what the average professional needs to know has nothing to do with that. It has to do with things we've been talking about. What are those policies? What are those procedures? What is the way to start the conversation? What is the way to get the word out about what you're doing? What do I need to do first, right? What is that first step? What is my second step? What is my third step? And giving them the kind of the roadmap to fill it in that's specific for their organization, so that when they finish the book, it's not going to be a long book, and it's 100 pages tops, right? It is not going to be long. It's not going to be in depth. It's not going to be It's not gonna have pictures, unfortunately, because I have no artistic skills. But I wish I could do pictures. But it really is gonna that hands-on work of how do I do it? There is some background stuff like if you really need to know what a tertiary gift is, here's what it is, right? If you need to know what a charitable remainder unit trust is, here's what it is. But there's no quizzes on it, and it's like so if donors comes to you and says, "Hey, I'm leaving you in my trust." They're not asking you to be a trustee, right? You're not ready to be a trustee. They're not asking you to write a trust. All they need to know is, how do I leave you in my trust? What's the right sideline? It's the exact same as your will wording. It's the exact same language. So, nothing even new to do. So there's this actionable information that gives what I could not find out in the marketplace existing already. Basic, simple information that you could act on that provide a roadmap to get you from either nothing or this is better than nothing to this is better than nothing. So that's ended up what I actually named the book, Better Than Nothing.
Oh, I love it.
It's just a very plain. I mean, I even made the cover boring, right? Because it's just simple. It's non-complex. There's nothing fancy about it. It's nuts and bolts to get it done without making your eyes glaze over.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, that's and we're going to give everybody a link to get on that waiting list for the book so they can sign up for it. And you said you think it'll be out in May?
Yeah, so it will be out in May. I'm hoping the first part of May. Yeah. I live in Louisville and it's Derby season right now. That sort of takes over everything.
Oh,
The
okay.
Kentucky Derby takes over everything. And
Oh,
so
yeah,
everything
I'm
is,
sure.
yeah.
So, I have one strange question, I guess, to close up, and then I'll always see if you have any more final words. But I'm curious about the name of your company. Where did the 9860 come from?
So I told you there was four of us that got together and I said, well, what are we going to call it? I said, well, I formed this company a long time ago. It's called Peak 9860. And I told them the story about it
Oh,
and they liked it. So we just kept it. So Peak 9860 comes from in the Sawtooth Mountains of Idaho, is a peak that stands 9,860 feet tall, and it is McGown Peak.
oh,
And McGown is an unusual name in
it
the
is.
US.
Oh my goodness.
McGown is a very, very common name in Australia, which
Oh.
sounds flattering till you realize it was a penal colony. So maybe it explains a little bit about that. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, good.
But so I got this. So it's just called Peak 9860. But when we talk about the name, when we're doing trainings, we talk about it, and I talk about it as really changing the perception because people want to call plan giving the ultimate gift. And ultimate is final, right? That's what ultimate means. It's final. And it isn't, right? Most people make a gift and then live for quite a bit longer. And ironically, plan giving donors are far more likely to not only continue their giving, but increase their giving than the average donor. So making a plan gift helps your bottom line today, not just tomorrow. And so it's not a ultimate gift. It's a peak gift. It's probably the largest gift they're ever going to make. It's the peak of their giving. And then you still have to shepherd them down off that mountain and through to the end of the trail. So it's the peak of where they are. It's not the ultimate. It's their largest gift they're ever going to make.
That's so true. I know I've always told people they need to start doing plan giving because of that fact that if I've made a planned gift to an organization, I sure as heck want to stick around, make sure it sticks around for long enough to receive my gift.
Yep.
I want to make sure it's in good shape. But so I know we've really, I could probably talk for hours with you because this is so fascinating. But do you have one final piece of advice that you would like to give people as far as setting up their planned giving program or managing it?
Yeah, I did. And I referenced it earlier. And I've got to come up with a good name for this. I've been brainstorming, so maybe you can come up with one. Nonprofits have to settle on one set of language. Do not give donors broadly, right? Answer a donor's question, do what they want to do, right? But give them and promote one option. whatever option, it does not matter to me, right? I would argue that general operating is what we want most, but it's the hardest to justify to the general public, right? So if you have an endowment, that's a great use for it because you weren't budgeting that money anyway. Most places aren't budgeting the money. The endowment's great. If you don't have one, start one. But whatever wording you want to be, if it's a rainy day fund, if it is your oversee, I don't care. Pick that wording and use that wording consistently and religiously. Assume that everyone you talk to wants to do what's best for your organization. The vast majority of donors not who want to leave in your will believe in you and they want to trust your opinion. So over 90% of donors will use the wording you give them to the best of their ability to what the donor is going to tweak or what the attorney is going to tweak, right?
Right.
It's those other ones who are going to say, well, I like that, but I want to do this. Go answer their question, right? The donors are always in control. They always have the option. But if
Right.
you give them the wording, you eliminate that analysis by or paralysis by analysis. You eliminate the questions. They know exactly what you want. They don't have to choose, oh, which one do they want more, which would be better. You give them what they needed. They went there, they found the wording that you've chosen as the best wording for your organization. So pick one, name it, use it consistently and persistently, and don't give other options on your website. Don't, well, you could do it this way, or you could do it this way, or you could do that. Or if you want to do it, no. One language. And then say, if this doesn't, if you're interested in another way of supporting us, please reach out to, and then give a name and a telephone number or name and an email address. And don't say, call our development department. Say, call Chris McGown at
Right.
whatever, right? Donors are far more likely to call a person than an entity. So anytime you're leaving contact information, always leave a real person. And then when they leave, make sure you update that. It is, yeah,
That,
it
that
is.
is such great advice. I was just recently looking for an organization to get in touch with an individual person, and all I kept seeing was contact our development office, contact our executive staff. No, I want to know who is there, who's the
I,
real person
I want
behind
to
it.
who I'm going to talk to because I want to know. I want to be able to address them in my voicemail, right? I want to be able to say, hey, Linda, thanks so much for answering the call. I want to talk about this. Do you have a minute now? Right? I want to be able to talk to that. And I'm no different than the average donor. The average donor wants to talk to a person. And
Right.
so leave a name. Yeah.
That's absolutely essential. Well, I think, I'd love to have you come back on the show again, maybe after the book is out, because I know as an author what you're going through now, getting ready. I'm getting two books ready to get published, so I know
Oh,
what you're
oh,
going through. But
yeah.
let's think about maybe having you back again sometime because this
I
is
would love it.
a fascinating conversation. So thanks again so much, Chris. I'm really happy that we found each other and got got to get together on this. So
I greatly appreciate the opportunity. As you can tell, I'm passionate about it. I want everybody to
yes,
have it. Whether you use me or not, I don't care. What I care about is you're out there talking about plan giving because a rising tide lifts all ships. So thank you.
absolutely. Thank you.